The show opens with an event called the Great Crumble, the moment civilization collapsed under the weight of a deadly virus. In the middle of the chaos, Dr. Aditya Singh fights under relentless pressure in the hospital. The virus, H5G9, spreads rapidly, wiping out more and more of the population. The first sign of infection is trembling fingers, and within days, the infected are claimed by death. Aditya fights tirelessly to save his patients, but everything shatters when his wife, Rani, becomes infected. During the outbreak, a terrifying new reality emerges when hybrid babies are born with half-human, half-animal features. No one knows which came first, the virus or these strange hybrids, and this startling anomaly becomes the darkest mystery they've ever encountered. Elsewhere, we see a man named Richard carrying his half-human, half-deer baby as he heads into Yellowstone National Park's remote wilderness. He knows the world outside is ruthless and deadly for his hybrid child, so he decides to hide him away from everyone. He constructs a fortified cabin deep in the forest, completely isolated from society. Richard names his child Gus and teaches him not just to read and write, but also how to survive in the wilderness. They fish, play in the snow, and mine sap from trees to make syrup, so they never have to leave their sanctuary and face the dangers beyond. One day, a group of flyers falls from the sky, claiming that a safe haven for hybrids exists, complete with food, shelter, healthcare, and protection. However, Richard sees it as a trap and burns the flyers before Gus has a chance to see them. When Gus turns 7, he starts asking his dad about life beyond the woods and why they never leave. Richard explains that the outside world is self-destructive and greedy, so nature retaliated and made everyone sick. Then, a miracle happened in front of the hybrids, but people feared them because they were different, so nature set fire to the rest of the world, which is now burning indefinitely. Richard warns Gus to stay within the walls, because what's outside is too dangerous. The scene then cuts to 2 years later, when Gus's curiosity has only grown stronger with his age. One day, he decides to be adventurous and proceeds to venture deep into the woods. His father fortunately finds him in time and rushes to bring him back, but it turns out to be too late, as a stranger outside the boundary has already spotted them. Not long after, the stranger returns to their fence, claiming he's looking for his sister, but Richard immediately greets him with a rifle, stating that his sister isn't here and demanding that he leave. The man discusses how society has devolved into scattered tribes fighting for scraps, and how hybrids are now blamed for the collapse. Just then, Richard is distracted by rustling leaves, but soon noticed the man had vanished. He has left behind tags all over the fence, meaning that their sanctuary is no longer a secret. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Richard immediately hides Gus inside the cubby and heads off to find the intruder. Gus patiently waits for a while, but he soon gets worried for his dad and exits the house. Moments later, a bloodied Richard finally comes back and assures his son that he is safe and no one will hurt him. But then, the badly injured man collapses on the ground, prompting Gus to take him inside. The next morning, Richard realizes he doesn't have much time left and informs Gus that her name was Birdie. He explains how they got separated when the world fell apart, and that's when he brought Gus here. He tells his son how he's the luckiest dad in the world to have spent the past 9 years with such a special boy. Richard makes Gus promise that no matter what, he must never leave this place and avoid all contact with outsiders. Shortly after this emotional conversation, Richard quietly passes away, leaving the poor boy alone for the first time in his life. The scene then cuts to 1 year later, where Gus has become the man of the house and is doing quite well. To cope with his loneliness, he has made stick friends and communicates with them regularly. One day, Gus gets frustrated with his garden and throws a lamp at the weeds, which quickly ignites into a raging fire. Afterward, the curious boy discovers an old box in the woods, inside which are money, credit cards, and a flyer claiming there is a safe place for hybrids. There's also a photo of a woman with Colorado written on the bottom. An excited Gus assumes it's his mother, so he pulls out a map and decides to hit the road to find her. After packing some stuff, Gus sets out on his big adventure, but he doesn't get far before he is suddenly attacked by a hunter's arrow. The poor boy tries to hide, but a second hunter sneaks up behind him and grabs him. Gus yells at them to let him go, and the two are shocked, as not only is the hybrid boy larger than others, but he can also speak. But before they can hurt him, a big man appears and shoots at one of the hunters. He then attacks the second hunter as well, while Gus seizes the opportunity to flee and hides inside the home. Later, Gus is in the cubby when the big man arrives and mentions how his antlers could fetch a high price for a poacher. He eventually manages to catch the boy, but is stunned when Gus speaks like a normal human. The big man feels conflicted and can't bring himself to hurt the little boy. He just warns Gus not to light fires during the day, as he could see the smoke from miles away. Gus then asks him where Colorado is, but the big man firmly tells him to never leave this place, as the outside world is too dangerous for his kind. After the man leaves, Gus thinks about his mom and realizes this might be his only shot at finding her. He then bolts toward the fence and exits Yellowstone National Park for the first time. He spots the big man in the distance and yells after him to stop and take him along too. Upon hearing this, The shocked man demands to know why Gus is following him, and the latter asks the man to take him to Colorado. The big man scoffs and says Colorado blew up and there's nothing left, but Gus senses he's joking and refuses to give up. He trails behind with unwavering determination, and in the end, the big man is forced to agree to keep him. That evening, they set up camp in the woods, and the big man discovers that Gus has extraordinary abilities, including sharpened hearing, a strong sense of smell, and even night vision. The next morning, when he wakes up, he is horrified to discover that Gus has eaten all of his food and has accidentally burned his only map. This sends him into full panic mode, but Gus quickly points to a visitor center perched at the top of a waterfall and insists there will be food there. Next, the big man sends Gus up to the visitor center alone while he scopes with his weapon from afar. Gus enters the place, and while snooping around, he freezes in horror when he sees a deer head mounted on the wall. The terrified boy tries to bolt but is immediately caught in a hidden trap. Just then, a kid named Rust arrives and immediately yells out for his parents. Later, we see Gus and the big man having lunch with Rusty's family, which includes his parents, Beverly and George. It turns out they have been living there as a hidden refuge ever since the virus broke out. Gus then asks about Rusty, and Beverly reveals that their son is the last of humankind before the hybrids came along. Gus wants to play with him, and even though the parents appear hesitant, they eventually agree. Later, we see George speaking privately with the big man, and here we learn that his name is Tommy, and he used to be a famous football player. George then demands to know why they're here, so Tommy reveals they'll stay the night and leave tomorrow. Elsewhere, we see Gus and Rusty getting along and having fun playing together, which touches Beverly's heart. Rusty plays music for Gus, and the latter jumps and dances around in pure excitement, since he had never heard such sounds before. The scene then cuts to Dr. Aditya, whom we saw at the start of the show. His wife, Ronnie, who is infected, turns out to still be alive because of constant medication, but her vaccines seem to be running out. So Aditya heads to a makeshift hospital in town, where he meets his senior, Dr. Gladys. After giving the medication, Gladys shockingly hands Aditya the notebook containing all of her research work. Gladys reveals to the man that she has stage 4 cancer, which means she can no longer work on finding the vaccine. She is therefore entrusting Aditya with this task because she knows there is nothing he would not do for his sick wife. But Aditya doesn't seem happy with this, and when he returns home, he shares the news with his wife. Ronnie appears excited that her husband might be the one to finally discover the cure. However, Singh becomes emotional and admits that he can't go through with it, as it goes against everything they stand for. This confuses Ronnie, prompting Aditya to hand her the notebook. As Ronnie flips through the pages, she uncovers something that leaves her utterly shocked and horrified. The scene then returns to Gus, who can't sleep at night and gets out of his room, where he notices Tommy leaving the house. He feels heartbroken, thinking the big man plans to abandon him and leave him with the family, but just then, they hear footsteps outside and realize that some hunters have arrived. Tommy checks his rifle and sees he only has 2 bullets left, which worries him. Moments later, the lead hunter arrives at the door and announces that they don't want to hurt the family and just want the hybrid kid. The terrified family also wakes up amidst the chaos and quickly hides in a corner while clutching each other. Tommy immediately launches into action and takes down the hunters one by one, but the leader manages to survive and sneaks inside where he grabs Gus. The poor boy fights back, using his slingshot and even trying to strike with his antlers, but nothing works. Just as the hunter is about to kill Gus, a massive deer suddenly appears at the door, startling everyone. The distraction gives Tommy the perfect moment to sneak up from behind and finally take down the hunter in one strike. The next day, Tommy and Gus prepare to leave, and Rusty is heartbroken to say goodbye to his friend. After saying farewell to the family, the duo boards a cable car and departs. Gus feels bad for bringing danger to Tommy, and insists he'll look for his mom alone, but Tommy tells him he'll help get him to the next town, after which they're done. Unbeknownst to them, we see a mysterious figure in a skeletal outfit watching them from a distance. In the next scene, a group of teens known as the Animal Army is seen immersed in an intense VR game. Suddenly, an alarm sounds, which indicates that a hybrid is in distress. The teenagers, along with their leader Becky, immediately remove their headsets and rush outside to deal with the situation. Elsewhere, we see Gus and Tommy trekking across vast landscapes and deserted train tracks. That night, they take shelter in an abandoned bus, where Tommy tells Gus that tomorrow they'll head to a train station, which will take the boy to Colorado. The next morning, Tommy prepares Gus for the journey and explains that the people after them are called the Last Men, who are very dangerous. To stay safe, Gus must disguise himself and pretend to be a regular kid dressed as a hybrid, just like on Halloween. A perplexed Gus questions whether there are any hybrids in town, to which Tommy responds that there are, but they're all caged. Meanwhile, Dr. Aditya takes over his mentor's research and is determined to find a cure for the virus. But, in a shocking twist, we learn that Gladys had been using hybrid children as disposable test subjects in her experiments. Dr. Aditya can't bring himself to hurt little kids, but he's desperate to find a cure and save his wife. While he's working, a group of last men arrive with medical supplies, revealing that the merciless hunter are actually working for the doctors. Later, Aditya approaches his wife at home, who is growing visibly weaker. The upset doctor shares his situation and admits he has followed every one of Gladys's formulas, except the one involving the brutal experiments on hybrids. Ronnie calms him down and then mentions a neighborhood party they have to attend. Aditya worries that others will find out about her condition, which they have kept secret, but Ronnie insists she is fine and reveals that she is not contagious. Sometime later, the couple arrives at a lively party, where the host, Doug, warmly greets them. Aditya remains anxious throughout and frequently glances at Ronnie's trembling hand. Luckily, no one else seems to notice, and everyone enjoys chatting and drinking. But the mood suddenly shifts when Doug's hand begins to shake uncontrollably, and he drops a glass. This alarms all the guests, who quickly cover their mouths and tie him to a chair. At their insistence, Aditya runs a virus test on Doug, and it comes back positive. In a shocking turn, the group locks Doug inside the house and sets the entire place on fire. As they watch it burn, they wonder how the virus could have returned after so long without any new infections. In another scene, Tommy and Gus arrive at the train station in disguise. Tommy immediately instructs Gus to stop doing any deer-like behavior and warns him not to talk to anyone unless they speak to him first. While he goes off to buy the train tickets, Gus wanders nearby and comes across a group of kids throwing objects at drawings of hybrids and cursing at them. This sight freaks him out, and he begins to panic. But just then, Becky appears out of nowhere and calms him. She then attempts to take Gus with her, but Tommy quickly drags him away and gives him the train ticket. Following this, Tommy helps Gus board the train, and the little boy pleads with him to come along, but Tommy tells him that this is where their journey ends and bids him goodbye. Moments later, the train begins to depart, only for a guard to suddenly arrive, shouting that the boy is a hybrid. They quickly grab Gus and remove his hat, confirming that his antlers are real. Tommy rushes in to fight them off, but the group easily overpowers him and captures him as well. Later, we see the duo being dragged through the woods by the last men, with their hands bound and eyes covered. It appears that all hope is lost until, out of nowhere, a volley of arrows rains down from the shadows and attacks the last men. The attackers quickly reveal themselves and ruthlessly take out the bad guys one by one until they are all eliminated. In the aftermath, they approach the duo, and we notice that their leader is the same mysterious figure in the skeleton outfit we saw in an earlier scene. A terrified Gus begs not to hurt him, but the figure removes her mask, revealing it's none other than Becky. As the episode ends, we learn that the flyers claiming to be from a safe haven for hybrids were actually dropped by the animal army themselves, who are, in truth, the protectors of hybrids. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to subscribe. Let's hit at least 1,000 likes and 100 comments so we can continue to the next part.